That's fine. I think you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and good evening to those residents watching, and good evening, Michael, for joining online. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me on Zoom? Michael, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. Thank you,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Paul.
Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so welcome to everyone who is watching and all those residents. Elected members of the committee unable to join in person are able to join remotely. I don't think there's any members who will be joining remotely tonight. We've got one. Apologies, that's Councillor Stephanie. Please, can we note that? With regards to meeting etiquette, please, I ask that you indicate by raising your hand or try to catch your eye. People online should raise their virtual hand and we'll monitor the screen what I've got in front of me for virtual hands. Please note that the chat function on Zoom will not be used at this meeting. Questions or comments on the agenda pack should be raised via the chair. Colleagues, as usual, we have a busy agenda tonight and I'm keen to move at pace, speed and adequate time. I'll repeat for the members and you will see, please keep questions concise, to the point and focused. No comments or speeches. If you off piece, I'll bring you back in order. Also to officers, really appreciate you being here. Please be direct, honest. If you don't know the answer, it's okay in my committee to say, you know what, Councillor Paul, I don't know. Can I write to you? That's perfectly okay. Is that okay for you guys? You don't need to wing it or pretend you know when you don't. Right? Right. The meeting of the London Birmingham Crime and Environment Transport Scrutiny Commission is now order. I welcome everyone here. What I'll do is to go around and yourself very briefly, very concisely, so we know who we are, and we'll do that. Can we start from Councillor O'Day, please?
Councillor Aikens, Councillor for Stratford on Park Ward.
Chandler Fagers, Councillor Police M.
Simon Rush, Plaster West, Canning Town East.
Councillor Colin Lee Parkway, Plasto South.
Councillor Sabia Kamali for Stratford Ward.
Oh, Councillor Terry Paul, Chair of the committee. We start, Artemis, Mark, you want to?
Aaron Sangian, Scrutiny Officer to the committee.
Artemis Cassie, Head of Scrutiny and Governance.
Councillor Ben Morris, Deputy Cabinet Member for Highways and Sustainable Transport.
Councillor Sarah Ruiz, Cabinet Lead for Environment and Sustainable Transport, Custom House Ward.
JB Cook, Acting Corporate Director for Environment and Sustainable Transport.
Paul Gannon, Head of Engineering for Highways.
Charles Mapundu, Traffic Management, Road Safety and Parking Design.
Martina Gabrielli, Principal Project Manager for Highways and Sustainable Transport.
Craig Nicol, Project Manager for Highways and Sustainable Transport.
Thank you. Good evening. So, one, apologies for absence. Sorry, Michael.
I'm sorry, just to introduce myself for everyone's benefit, I'm Michael Benn, the Assistant Director for Traffic and Parking.
And also, thank you for joining us from the sunny Devon. It's really appreciated.
It's sunny.
Well, Devon, you know.
I would also like to highlight that Michael has come on his annual leave.
That is true.
So kind of
pointed out. And Michael, thank you for coming on your annual leave and really appreciate it. And we'll be brief, to the point, and appreciative of your time tonight. Thank you. So
Thank you.
So there's one apology for absence, which is Councillor Garfield. Is there any declarations of interest in any of the matters tonight? Apart from okay, fine. Minutes. I'll take the minutes as read. Accuracy, any accuracy points? Any matters arising? Can I say, Aaron and Artemis, well done, really good set of minutes. Also to the committee, it's a really strong set of actions. So well done on that, really good piece of work there. I'm going to move on. So I move, but the minutes of the previous meeting be agreed as a correct record. Can I have that moved and seconded? Yeah. Very much. That noted. Okay, so we're going to go into the parking policy. As we go on, I want to give a bit of thanks actually, and it shows the constructive nature of scrutiny. One, to the committee, especially Councillor Kamali, for raising some of the issues in the parking policy. also to Councillor Morris and Councillor Ruiz, who were engaged in the process outside of this meeting, and I flagged up their concerns and that. And also, I must say thank you to Michael. We had, I think, about a 50-minute call when you took me through the cabinet paper and some of the rationale, and it was very helpful. And I have noted there has been some changes in the visitors parking policy, which we'll discuss tonight. That's been really appreciated. I think that's the power of scrutiny and officers and cabinet members working together to get a good outcome for residents. I think it's really good, but we note that because sometimes it's not so noted as well. So then this item on parking policy is to review an update on the borough's parking policy following the recent cabinet paper in December and a recent update to members. Members would have received a supplementary materials item, including a preparation providing a high-level overview of the recent findings that was provided by Michael Ben, who's the Assistant Director for Traffic and Parking. So I'd like to extend the welcome to Councillor Rose and John Morris, Councillor John Morris, our political leads. Do you want to introduce the item, give us a flavour? I don't know, did you want to run through the presentation? How do you want to do it tonight?
I don't think, well, in the time saving really, to be fair, Chair. I mean, I think that the report that you have in front of you speaks for itself. I would just like to say that actually it's not just the power of scrutiny, it's also the power of proper consultation. You know, normally we aren't great at consultation, but this shows that actually we have listened and the changes have been made. So, but I'm quite happy to hand over. I don't know whether John wants to add anything, but Michael.
Just one thing I would like to add is that often in consultations, people see consultations as a reason to object to something, complain about something. But one of the things I found about this consultation is that actually many residents propose a different set of type of charges. And actually, that's quite constructive. And I would like to congratulate the residents that actually proposed those changes. And that's one of the reasons why we enthusiastically took on board those changes.
Has the ability to resurrect the dead. You know, that is that motive.
I have found that.
Yeah. Michael, do you want to give any overview comments on what we'll do? We can get straight to the members to ask a question on it at all.
Certainly, thank you, Chair. I think the paper obviously clearly lays out what's transpired. So I developed proposals on behalf of Parking in conjunction with Councillor Rees and Councillor Morris ahead of last December in order to tackle two key areas. One, the need to improve local air quality. And as you'll see within the paper that's in front of you this evening, air quality is a contributory factor in the deaths of 1 in 13 people within Newham. And the administration has been very clear on its ambitions to improve local air quality, and tackling pollution coming from vehicles is certainly at the vanguard of the efforts that we need to make as a borough. And the second element is around the and tackling climate change. And as the paper lays out, we have some real challenges in Newham, which has got some of the most at-risk neighbourhoods in terms of the risk of heat spots within the capital, and that the impact of vehicles in particular is one that is being the most challenging to address within the UK. Whilst there's been lots of efforts successfully to decarbonise, particularly amongst energy, vehicles remain the largest single contributor as a percentage to UK emissions, and those levels have largely stayed level for the last 10 years. So the paper that I put forward, and which is explained in what's in front of you today, laid out 4 key areas to try and address. We looked firstly at diesel surcharges, which is something that's been introduced by a number of London boroughs since around 2015 and has been very successful in reducing the number of diesel vehicles. Some boroughs, such as Hackney, have seen the number of diesel vehicles decline by 45% over a 7-year period since the introduction of diesel surcharges. And it was felt that it was high time to introduce similar charges in Newham in order to try and encourage that same speed of transition away from diesel vehicles towards cleaner and less polluting vehicles. The feedback from the consultation highlighted, sorry, before I go into detail, Chair, would you like me to walk through the details of what the consultation feedback was? Or would you like me to really keep it very brief and leave maximum time for questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Bishop. We've gone through the consultation feedback. I think one of the questions will come on that anyway. I think we'll deal with it then. So we've got the report provides us the data anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll just go straight to questions. You okay with that, Michael? Yeah? Yeah?
Yes, that's absolutely fine with me.
Okay. Is there like a super fact you wanted to bring out? A couple of headline facts though, just to frame it?
I think the headline facts really are that diesel surcharges have got a long track record in working to help speed up the transition away from diesel vehicles, and certainly is a change that I believe will really deliver local air quality improvements within the borough. The other change is just about strengthening the incentives for those driving electric and low polluting vehicles to see the benefit of reduced parking charges, which we've applied across the board, whilst also increasing the prices for those driving the most polluting vehicles, because one of the things that Newham has not necessarily had in place historically has been a significantly large enough difference between the charges between electric vehicles and high polluting vehicles to incentivize the kind of change that the administration would like to see delivered.
Okay, what I want to do, I'll take the questions in threes, right? So I've got who indicated by I was Councillor Kamali, Councillor O'Day, Councillor Lee Parkway. The second lot will be Nate, Simon, and Councillor Fadus. Okay, so two groups. First group, Sabia.
Okay, my questions around consultation process and representation. Newham's population exceeds 350,000 residents, yet only 467 individuals participated in this consultation on the proposed changes to visitors parking permit, which represents less than 0.2% of the borough's population. Given that many households rely on visitors permit for family support, carers and essential service, how can the council justify that this consultation was adequate, captured the view of the most affected? Considering the low response rate, will the council reconsider repeat the consultation to ensure it genuinely reflects the needs of affected residents?
Okay, Salma?
My question is on, again, this topic. So, as has been said, 407 residents made a proposal, and that's been adopted by the council, which is a good example of the council residents working together. However, I wanted to ask about 2 and 4. So, on slide 7, there's 2 tables. One table is a 2 hour and for 1 day. For the 2 hours, it shows that 15,425 hertz. That column is not in the second table, but it says 1 day. So it's to know why that column isn't there. We can't see the number of permits for. However, if that's a really popular, second most popular category of parking permits for, why is that going up by 71%? Because we've said that we don't try to make income on parking. So why not in the up there?
Carlin?
I have a question in regards to the qualities impact assessment and what we don't see in the documents that we've received is what the impacts are of the through traffic to the borough, and why is it that the poor people of Newham are having to pay for the through traffic, the air quality that inspires.
You want to politically lead off and then bring in Michael? How do you want to do it? Or Mike?
Do?
Yeah.
I mean, to Sabia's question, I would think that actually, I know it's not a very big number, but actually that is considerably more than we would ever get on most consultations. So, you know, those people who are really interested would know about it, and they didn't participate. So 471, I think it was actually a really good percentage of people who voted. You wouldn't normally get that in many other boroughs. I think that the very fact that we've taken into consideration their overwhelming wish to have a 1 or 2 hour, 6, 12 and 24 has shown that we've listened. And so no, we won't be going back out to consultation on that. There is another paper coming to Cabinet in May, and that will also form another consultation, so we will look to see how we can change the way in which we do the consultation by maybe advertising it a bit more, etc., etc. Thelma, I didn't quite understand your question, but
So shall I explain it a little bit more?
yeah.
So have you got the slide in front of you?
Well, I don't know. Slide what?
7. This is a permit that says summary of proposal.
Yeah.
And it's 2 pages.
Okay.
So if you see the table that says 2 hour,
Yeah.
the first column says number of permits.
Yeah.
But in the second table, that column isn't there.
Yeah.
And my question is, the first table shows that that's a very popular permit, the tier 4 one.
Yeah.
So if that's so popular, why are we choosing to increase the price to 71p? How have we come up with that figure, and why 71p? And that's, just to note,
I think Michael have to answer that question.
Okay.
Is this the one you're talking?
Yeah.
I mean, it's mute because these are no longer our proposals, but it's mute because it's no longer our proposals, but I'm sure Michael can comment on that.
Michael?
so it is in the proposals, because on the next slide it says, when it's 24 hours, it says it's not included in the consultation feedback, but it's still there.
Okay, Michael, do you want to answer Councillor O'Dea's question?
I would. So just to walk through the 3 questions. Firstly, in terms of the consultation process and the level of engagement, we actually had 913 responses in total, of which 467 put forward the proposals which form the backbone of the revised proposals that we are proposing to take back to Cabinet in May for approval. So, picking up very much on what Councillor Rees said, in my experience, that's a really high level of response to a relatively small consultation in terms of the levels of changes being made. And I think it speaks to the levels of engagement there are from Newham residents and the efforts we made through our statutory consultation, but also making it abundantly clear on our website so that we could get as much engagement as we could from the public. And I'm really pleased that so many residents did take part and gave us their views. In line with traffic management legislation, we will, after going to May Cabinet, need to reconsult on the revised proposals. As they do, they're a substantive change on what was originally put forward, so there'll be a further opportunity for the public to have their say, but obviously based around the new proposals laid out on the last slide within the paper. In answer to the second question, I'm afraid the audio at my end isn't great, so I wasn't able to pick up the detail of the proposal, but on slide 7, it outlined the proposals on the volumes of permits that were sold, what those charges currently look like for the nearest equivalent, and proposals that were introduced for either a 24-hour or a 2-hour visitor permit, which is based very much on long feedback we've had for many years, where residents have asked for something shorter to be able to be offered, because not everyone wants to be able to park for 6 hours, and in many cases felt they were overpaying for the privilege of doing so. But obviously the proposals that we are now accepting off the back of the consultation will see the introduction of a 1-hour visitor permit in addition to the existing products, which will offer a significantly cheaper rate than has hitherto been available. And lastly, in regard to the equalities impact assessment, the reason why through traffic isn't included is that these proposals only deal with parking within the borough, and therefore through traffic is not affected by proposals for vehicles that neither start nor end their journey within Newham, and that's why the equalities impact assessment doesn't deal with the impact of those vehicles on local air quality.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I come back with a supplementary then?
Okay.
So just off the back of that, Michael, thank you for that commentary. However, the documents of which we've received is titled Improving Air Quality Parking Charges. So if we're improving air quality, why are we not also taking in consideration other factors? Because surely we can't just be charging residents of Newham when they're not necessarily the people in the problem.
Indeed, but as the paper highlights, it's dealing with parking charges, and therefore, whilst there are undoubtedly impacts of vehicles crossing the borough, and obviously there are different ways to address that, such as low emission zones and other work that the council has, such as low traffic neighbourhoods, in order to try and reduce vehicles travelling through residential streets and improving local air quality. In relation to parking itself, that can only deal with parking within the borough, and that's where the focus of these efforts has been addressed. It is important to say, though, that we currently have within Newham about 900,000 individual visitor parking sessions every single year. You'll see within the paper that it includes proposals to increase charges for medium to high polluting vehicles in order to discourage the use of more polluting vehicles by visitors and encourage modal shift towards sustainable and active travel in order to reduce the impact of those who choose to drive within the borough on local air quality and CO2 emissions.
What I'm going to do, I see two people have indicated. Is this a new question or is it supplementary to the question you asked?
A supplementary, but it's not answered, but I've got another question.
No, yeah, I can wait to the third term. Supplementary to.
It's a supplementary to the question in terms with the consultation.
Very brief then.
Yeah, I mean, generally, Newham carries its consultation out through co-create. On this occasion, it didn't. So it raises a question around the equality assessment of how this has been done, because we have left out elderly, young families, disabled, people with protective characteristics when we did this consultation. So from what I've gathered, Newham's consultation is done through co-create, but this one wasn't. I'd just like to know why the consultation was done different and why the equality assessment wasn't done, because it is people with protective characteristic, vulnerability and affected that weren't part of.
Add to that, were the reference groups consulted, like SEND group, young people group? Yeah, the co-production.
Co-production.
Were they consulted, the co-production group?
I don't know, Terry. I don't know the answer to it.
I'm bringing you.
I don't know why it wasn't done on
Michael,
either.
is there any comments to that at all before we move on to the second set of questions?
So in answer to both those questions, so co-create wasn't used. That is my fault. I was not aware, being relatively new to the council, of co-create being the primary route that we undertake consultations through. I am now aware of that, and I will give assurances to the committee tonight that future consultations, including the consultations on the revised proposals, will be done through co-create, so that there is that opportunity to ensure the engagement and we can understand the diverse backgrounds of those who take part in the consultation.
Okay, I'm going to ask the political leads they want to come in, but my question, if the consultation has not been done to its maximum, i.e. using the co-production groups, should these policies be undermined at some point down the road by a challenge? So therefore, in order to do belt and braces, would it not be ideal to run a co-create consultation to ensure that it's robust? Are we not subject to future challenge down the road?
I think, in fairness, Chair, that with the next lot of consultation, which will go out after May the 6th, I think, that yes, we will now use co-create.
Brilliant.
Apologies that Michael didn't know about co-create, but also I think we will arrange for it to be taken to, for example, the co-production groups. It's actually, that will add to that.
Just thinking to protect the
Yeah.
process. John,
I made a note of it.
second set of questions. Is there anything you want to add to the first set of questions at all?
Yeah, so as Councillor Wu has said, the numbers that we got in the consultation, but also the quality of the responses were actually quite good, and I would call it one of the success, especially compared to past consultations on parking. But I would also add that one of the gold standards that I highlight in consultation is the West Ham LTN, where in comparison to other LTNs in country, but also in the borough, other consultations that is, we managed to achieve about half the equivalent of the local election turnout, which is a stunning turnout. But that does not mean that we managed to get responses, while we did manage to reach all the people in the wards. And I think there is a level of pressure there where we make the assumption that if we didn't receive any responses, then somehow the consultation is a failure. I am a council tenant, and actually housing is consulting on some of the recent changes in regards to the social housing regulators report. I was asked, did I want to be part of this consultation, and I asked for my responses, and I actually didn't feel like I had any input. I didn't feel like I had anything to input into that consultation, and I chose not to participate. And I think there are cases where some people just may not have an opinion on something.
They make a positive choice.
Wait, can I just clarify on Simon's?
No, I'm going to move on, perhaps at the end, if I get a chance. Fairness to our council colleagues, Nate, Simon, Shantu. Order.
Thanks, Kerry. One of the other papers that we're looking at tonight says that our level of revenue management budget can impact our ability to secure future funding for capital schemes. Why then are we not using this as an opportunity to introduce an SUV surcharge, size and weight based parking as Cardiff, Paris, Bristol, many of the cities we're looking at doing?
Great, Simon.
Oh, I know. Right. No, I'll go to another question. I'm thinking about, we appear to be copying other London boroughs by putting a surcharge on diesel owner drivers or vehicle drivers, because many lease, etc. The majority of diesel vehicle drivers are probably workers, specifically private hire. There's probably, I think my last check, when I checked with TfL, there's nearly 8,000 of them. Many of those will be still driving diesel vehicles. So,
and the question is?
The question is, why are we doing it when, if we're aware of that, and it's common sense that we should be, that with the new rules and regs coming via Transport for London, basically getting rid of diesel private hire vehicles, when say hit a 10 price back, why are we charging when in reality they're naturally going down?
Thank you, Simon.
Hi, my question is with you. How is it possible to monitor air quality fully if LBN doesn't have the internal resources and licenses to conduct the necessary traffic modeling assessment?
Brilliant. So political leads, do you want to answer those questions and we get the technical Michael to come in?
Or just to comment on,
yeah,
I know we had conversations about this.
Going on about it for
Yeah.
Hey, let him answer the question, Nate.
So what I would say is non-electric vehicles are going to be banned from 2030, and sorry.
I mean, that seems like the government's going back.
Hold on, let him answer the question. Let's not have a debate.
So can you repeat that, John? Sorry.
Hold on. Let him answer the question.
No, I was just asking to repeat,
Hear what he said.
please.
Okay.
So I can't comment on that, but what I can comment on is what I know now, and that those vehicles will be banned by 2030 or 2035. I think it's 2030. One of the things I am worried about is providing a preserve incentive for people to keep low weight petrol based vehicles rather than transitioning to electric EVs. When we are in a period of transition where more and more people are transitioning to EVs. And the only way to negate that is to do a dual permit based on weight and emissions, but that complicates the system and makes it impractical. I would rather wait a few more years where we get a higher level of people buying EVs before transitioning into weight-based.
Okay, I think by the look on Nate's face, there's a supplementary there, quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not impractical. Other boroughs are already doing it or looking at doing it to do a combination of emissions and size and weight. But even if it wasn't a combination, even if it were just size and weight, I understand your fear, but that's why the national ban is coming in. If electric vehicles are heavier, therefore their impact on wear and tear is larger, therefore their cost to us is higher, and therefore we need to spend more maintaining roads. So we should be charged, even if they're electric and they're better on emissions, they still should be paying their way.
So could we, just to take it forward, because rather than a debate, is there something you can take that away?
Yeah.
And consider it, bearing in mind, Nate has mentioned some national guidelines, and some national banding. So surely we should it'd be useful if you were to take that away and come up with an outline proposal, which then perhaps scrutiny could be involved in at some point in shaping.
I've made
That's fine.
Great, happy with that. I'm gonna come to the next. Simon, your question? You had two there. Sorry?
Hasn't answered it yet.
Sorry, Sorry, can I answer Simon's question?
I have a question about
Sorry.
are we,
Thank you.
are we charging for diesels when we're going to get rid of them anyway?
I mean, I haven't got an answer to that.
Michael will answer that.
Okay, so just a question on that, if I can, supplementary chair's privilege. In the paper, you compare, you say in summary, look at Islington and Hackney, they're, you know, it blah, 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 blah. Whereas Barking and Dagenham and Havering don't have any surcharge. Obviously, Hackney and Islington, in disparaging to them, are a different population mix, an industrial mix.
As are Havering and Barking.
And yes, and those South London boroughs more have a white van, man and woman culture, let's say, than Hackney and Islington. Sorry for those online who are about to troll me. So, aren't we perhaps discriminating against the hard-working white van person of Newham? Because surely to have a comparison with a more upwardly mobile borough is not a very good comparator.
I'm sure that both Hackney and Islington would say they had more in common with us than Barking and Havering, Chair.
I mean, I was just gonna add, when you mean white man van, do you really mean an independent tradesperson that drives a van? It's more of a point of clarification than anything else.
That tradesperson could be a plumber, locksmith, chippy, who's got a van. If I look at my neighbours in my street and my cousins who live in the outer boroughs, they are you're more likely, London's industrial heft is in northeast London, right? All the tradespeople roughly being above average here. Why a resident could say we're discriminating against them working?
Well, I would also add to that, some of the other proposals is that we're bringing in new types of permit to charge higher and longer vehicles as well. And actually, that's also been a complaint, as Michael will highlight. Some of the signs have been vandalised because people with, such as those tradespeople, want to park, but there's no limits.
But also, I would feel happier, and I think the committee feel happier, if the comparison was with Havering and Barking, like-minded outer London boroughs, than inner London. Because in every other part of council services, we're always compared with outer London boroughs, not inner London. I just want to.
I've made a note of that as
well. Leave that there, okay? So with Shantu's question, Simon's question.
My question hasn't been answered.
No. Wait for them to answer it.
Would Shantu mind repeating the question?
Okay.
Your question,
Okay, so I asked, how is it possible for Newham to monitor air quality fully if LPM doesn't have the internal resources and licenses to conduct the necessary traffic modeling assessment?
So we do, I think we do have an air quality officer, so that capacity exists, and
We have, but very limited, that's my question.
Yeah, and just to support my council colleague, last month's meeting, when we had the air quality people, there was an issue about air quality meters around Silvertown Tunnel.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite a concrete, yes, we've got them, we're going to measure it.
I think that's basically because, if I might, TfL have promised us X and have only delivered Y. So Silvertown Tunnel is a prime example, got nothing to do with us. But unless Michael's got an answer or any of my colleagues here about the air quality thing, we can get an answer back to.
Yeah, and I think it's more, what heft could we use with our City Hall colleagues to ensure we get the resources monitored, because it has been a committee and rightfully raised. And I think it will be useful, Sarah, if you were to bang the drum for Newham back, especially around the Barking Road corridor, going back to Tunnel.
But Michael may well have additional answers to all of those.
Add some context to what you just heard.
Certainly. So, firstly, on the question of size and weight restrictions, just to echo some of what Councillor Morris said, you know, we've got strong ambitions as a council to increase the levels of vehicles in the borough which are electric, and the difficulties with moving towards weight-based or including weight as a factor is that it will disproportionately affect electric vehicles, which, because of their batteries, tend to be heavier for what are otherwise or outwardly similarly sized vehicles, which will only drive up the costs for permits of those that make the transition towards electric, which means that will decrease the incentives for people to make that shift and will lead to us having combustion engine vehicles on our roads for longer than would otherwise be the case.
Okay, Nate, comment?
My question then.
Hold on.
He was answering my question. The problem with that though is that disproportionately people who are paying for electric vehicles are wealthier and more able to pay those more expensive permits.
Not necessarily.
No.
They're contributing to higher costs for the council in wear and tear on the roads. And then the larger vehicles contribute more to road debts, congestion, and take up more parking space in the first place. So it's just, when you look, I know, and obviously considering my political affiliation, like I'm sympathetic to wanting to lower emissions through parking charges, but not when it creates perverse incentives and not when it fundamentally undermines our ability to pay for the road maintenance that we have to.
I think that was a comment, Nate.
Also not Nate contributes to road debts.
Nate, point well made. We're not going to solve that tonight, but I think you made this point well. Okay, you made the point. There's a comment. I've got Thelma and Simon. I got this is the last set. Right, we've got. If you can be brief on this one. Sorry, go on, Michael.
Sorry, just Chair, to come in just on the other two questions that were raised. So the first question in relation to why we're charging diesel surcharges for diesel work vehicles. You know, it is the case that business vehicles will tend to spend far longer on the road due to the nature of the fact those vehicles are, you know, used for many hours a day for work purposes. Will often travel in relatively small geographical locations. There are, in terms of, I think the question that you're driving at was why are we looking to introduce a diesel surcharge when people are moving away from diesels anyway? The argument we would make is that that transition is not happening swiftly enough to tackle the problems of air quality that I explained at the top of my introduction. And, you know, alongside complementary support that's already in place from both a national government and also the Mayor of London to support businesses to go green, both through grants for introduction of infrastructure for EV charging at workplaces, but also to help people shift towards electric vehicles for small and medium-sized businesses. We think these changes are complementary to that to provide the right level of incentive for those who are considering moving away from diesel vehicles to do so sooner than they otherwise would have done. And just lastly, on the question of air quality, I'm afraid I don't have more to add. I know that having had a conversation myself with our air quality team, they certainly would be keener to be able to undertake more in-depth monitoring and have a wider range of air quality sensors and monitoring stations across the borough. I think the nature of the changes that are being proposed and that we're aiming to deliver through these changes will be quite diffuse, and so perhaps may not be quite as easily identifiable as some of the more targeted changes that we make through the likes of healthy school streets or low traffic neighbourhoods. But there's certainly conversations ongoing about how we can best support that team to do their work and to collate the evidence necessary to help us have a really good handle on what's happening with air quality in the borough and how where we're seeing improvements.
Okay, last question. Thank you, Michael. I've got Thelma, Simon, Carleen, Sabia, Shantu. And if we can be super brief, super focused, less comment, more question.
In the cabinet paper, it talks about how the increases for TS4 and 25 especially are going to be quite a lot. And the reason for it is to find people to move away from parking vehicles. But it also says that this increase might lead to people just not paying parking. And so to mitigate this, we don't have enforcement patrols and vehicle checks. Do we have to actually have the facilities to actually have these checks? Because if we don't, then sometimes it's just not be done.
Thank you. Okay.
Good question.
I think we do. I think that we've really well targeting parking infringements. But you also need to remember that a lot of these people who have larger vehicles have also got drives. So therefore they're not parking on the road, so therefore we're not charging them anyway.
Yep.
So do you know what I mean?
So in other circumstances, when they're not parking in bays, they might just try and get away with it.
Well, they won't, because we will have, I mean, you know, you've only got to talk to the majority of residents who are absolutely livid at the amount of times that we charge people, fine them for parking. So, but they also, majority of those larger vehicles park on drives.
Okay, Michael, anything to add? You can, if you want to, yes or no?
Just to say, we have lots of civil enforcement officers who try to ensure that we protect our parking for residents and visitors, and those that pay, and those that don't, we will enforce against in line with legislation and the rules that we're permitted to.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. I'm going to go towards air quality rather than vehicles. Recent studies which have been released over the last 3 or 4 days are suggesting in central London that 72% of nitrogen oxide emissions are created through gas boilers. Are we actually looking at that as in our borough how much of our borough? We've always come out with figures of vehicles are creating this number of nitrogen oxides going out. Are we looking at gas boilers in what percentage of that is causing the thing?
Could you, done that?
That's of a wider remit than.
Yeah, I think it's a crossover question, and obviously if we had the air quality people, they.
Yeah, I think that's something that should go back to them.
Yeah, because the question is, what is the composition of our Noxus 2 and whatever PMs? What's the how much of that is car based or vehicle based? How much of that is gas?
I've made a note of that to go back to them.
Good question, Simon. Carleen.
Thank you, Chair. So my direct question is, thinking about these parking charges and the changes, do these affect our council fleet? And are we also paying, the council paying the same charges that we expect our residents to be paying?
What, the council fleets, did you say?
Sorry. Council fleets, so buses, cars, vans, everything that we own, are they subjected to the same parking charges that the vehicles that our enforcement go out on in and park up? Are they subject to the same council, same fees as our residents are? The other question I have.
Hold on, I just want.
And the other question I just want to, I guess it's not a question, Sarah, it's more a in the future. So in regards to the qualities impact assessment, I just want to ask, what I don't see in that is the effects it has on families that have disabled children. Because often families that have disabled children have bigger vehicles to accompany equipment and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't see that in the impact assessment, and I'd like to see that going forward.
So Sarah, we did discuss, we're going to redo the consultation after.
So one of the things that we'll be doing is going to the New and Parents Forum, etc. And I'm sure that'll be something that they will raise.
Great. Sabia?
On the equality impact assessment, we emphasize on the environment benefit of this, but we don't talk about the financial impact on vulnerable groups. For example, we're doing a comparison between 6 hours with 2 hours. That makes no sense. Like even then, we're paying more for 2 hours than we did for 6 hours. So are we doing a financial equality assessment? Because obviously we live in a borough where a lot of people are under the poverty line.
So these charges are for parking for visitors. Yeah. So one of the huge expressions was that actually, and I would be one of these people. I have maybe somebody come to my house maybe for 2 hours, but I have to pay for 6 because that's my only choice at the moment. Whereas now I'll be able to pay for 2 hours and feel that I paid for 2 hours and not wasted 4.
Yeah, but
there isn't that much of a difference in the pay.
There is, because what you're paying for 2 hours is what you paid for 6 hours. So really, on this revised one, you were paying £1.56 for 6 hours. For 2 hours, you're paying £1.
For 2 hours.
No. Well, you are, but then if you times that by.
Yeah, but you wouldn't, would you? Because if you wouldn't.
You're getting rid of 6 hours where people need 6 hours.
Getting rid of 6 hour permits.
Yeah, we give
1, 6, 12, 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you've got somebody coming round your house for 6 hours, you aren't likely to buy 6 1-hour permits, are you? You would buy a 6-hour permit.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless I've missed something there.
Michael?
So just to answer those questions directly, so the first question around will the council be paying the same charges that everyone else is for any vehicle that has a permit? The answer is categorical yes. It's just as important we hold ourselves to the same standards and to account in the same way. And having these surcharges will make sure that we are helping to strengthen the case for our colleagues in fleet to make the shift away from diesel vehicles where we still have them. In respect of carers, and those with disabled children. Obviously, these changes don't deal with resident permits, but it's important to say that we do have other support that we provide. So we have a carers permit. So for anyone who's in support of carers allowance, we provide a permit at only £11 per year, which is certainly the cheapest carers permit I'm aware of that's offered anywhere within London to support carers to do their vital work within the borough. And just in answer to the last question, the revised proposals, which we've accepted in full from the residents that took part in consultation, will see visitors being able to park for lower charges now than they have been up until now. So previously, I think you touched upon, the cheapest rate you could pay was £1.56 for 6 hours and £2 for mid-range tier 3, which is where most vehicles fall in. Now, for people who are only visiting for 1 hour, they'll be able to pay £1 and £1.40 respectively. So that offers a cost reduction for people who are having visitors for a short period of time, and I think will be a very welcome addition to our product range.
2 clarifications. Right, these are going to be super comment stuff, questions, right? Very brief, 1-sentence comments, clarifications.
So it was just clarification. It goes back to the financial impact where people are who need permit for 6 hours. So where they were paying 156, what I'm saying is they're paying £6. So it has increased for 6-hour permit, not 2 hours permit, a 6-hour permit. That's what I'm saying. So it has an impact on people.
They're paying £6 for 6 hours.
I don't know.
Yeah, on this one.
I don't think so.
That's the old proposals.
That's the old proposal.
That's the old one.
Pauline?
Just in response, Michael, with regards to fleet, at some point, will that paper come back with how much money's been flowed back from fleet in regards to the charges that the council have received? Will there be a paper that says that? Because there has to be what money's been received through resident parking permits. Will that be the same for the councils?
So that figure will be rolled up in the overall level of income that comes in on business permits. So we require council staff to apply for business permits in the same way that residents do, that businesses within the borough do. I'm sure we can provide a breakdown in due course once we've had 12 months worth of data to collate.
The business permits are a concession. They are a lot cheaper than in a bay.
Well, you can pay a business permit, it's £800 a year.
Yeah, but thinking about the fleet, those vehicles are out every single day.
Right, so
residents could buy a business permit if they wanted.
You have to have a business.
Right, if the RMS, if the repaired vehicles go to a property, do we put visitor parking permits on RMS vehicles?
No, it's business permit.
So every vehicle,
they will have a business permit.
Right, every RMS vehicle has a business permit.
Yeah. However, Chair.
Hold on.
External providers like housing associations in this borough that have multiple properties, or people that are in temporary accommodation who need repair people to come, they would need a visitor's permit paid by the resident.
They can get a business permit.
Well,
okay. Hold on.
Let's say it, then they be.
So, could we?
Not all.
All right. So we need to get to the conclusion. We know which housing associations roughly are in the borough.
Yeah.
Right. Could we write to them, because this is a source of revenue for you guys, then say you're eligible, these are our new charges, you might like to get a business permit for your vehicles. And that would
do that. I'll be shocked if they, I'd be shocked because these are housing associations and they would put permits across other boroughs, other local authorities. I'm shocked if they weren't aware we had a business.
Let's reverse it. So our tenant, do we actually inform our tenants but they don't have to get a visitor's permit for housing tenant repair person coming.
I'm not sure we don't do that about housing associations, no,
Right,
but we can take, I'm sure Michael will made a note of that.
right, so.
Yeah.
Shantu and Simon, very briefly.
Shanti first, come.
Go on, Shantu, very briefly. And these are comment, right? Go on then.
It's a quick question.
HSS is a part of a broader strategy that aims to create healthier and safer streets.
That's the next section.
Next section, that's the next, not this section.
It's not on parking.
Thelma,
No,
hold that question, Shantu. Simon.
thank you, thank you. Very quick question. Thank you, Michael, for clarifying. Professional carers pay £11 a year to park where on their caring duties, and I underline the word professional. What about carers who are looking after elderly relatives that are official carers, perhaps claiming benefits as official carers? Are they entitled to those?
I think that they are, that you,
So the answer is carers permits are something that
I can't give an answer that I know to be right.
You can, no one said you couldn't.
Well, hold on,
I want to hear what Michael's got to say. Go on, Michael.
hold on. Sarah, have you finished?
Yes, you can.
Right, yes, the answer is you can.
Yeah, yes, you can.
You can, and Michael.
Exactly.
Fabia,
Thank you.
Michael is nodding in the affirmative, aren't you? You're Mike, yeah, right, great. So, Thelma.
My question is on the diesel surcharge on businesses. So we make comparisons with other boroughs on how much they pay for their business permit. We don't talk about the reduction that's made, but on page 2, it says that opposite expect that with this reduction, we expect reduction between 5 to 15%. So I want to see how you came up with that, given that we haven't made any comparisons to the other boroughs, we've only the comparison, not reduction.
That would be a
That
technical
would be
question.
Michael.
So it's page 8, 3.4.
Forgive me, Chair. Sorry, I didn't catch the detail of the question there.
Page 9.
Page 9,
3.4.
What's the question briefly?
So the question briefly is, how has come up with the idea that there'll be a reduction of 5 to 15%?
Okay, stop. What's the question? Michael.
So that's based on the experiences that other local authorities have seen following the introduction of diesel surcharges.
But there's nothing about that in the report.
Right, so Michael, can you add the justification in the report, perhaps in a small paragraph to justify data in the report?
Sure.
Lovely, thank you. Right, and just one final thing. In how long, Michael, have we had this system? The parking system? And the reason.
Parking permits.
Yeah, because is it as flexible and is the system as flexible as it should be for our future needs?
No, but we're on a contract. In a few years, we're looking at, well, it depends on what systems are out there, but we are looking at other proposals. Yeah.
Great.
Do you mean the actual system, like my permits?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Please.
Some people want to go and get their fish and chips on holiday, you know?
Is this a rant comment or?
I just want to ask a question, just in regards to those residents in the borough that this will affect more so than others. So I'm thinking about those residents that are, for instance, living in areas in Plotton South that are next to a hospital that have no parking throughout 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night. Is the impact assessment deal with those residents also?
Well, because they're not allowed to park.
You can't park in those areas between 8 AM to 4 PM.
Not even with a visitor's permit.
Well, only with a visitor's permit, but they will constantly be paying the whole day.
Yeah.
Compared to those that are finished at 6 o'clock.
It's 8 o'clock to 6:30 around, I think it's Prince Regent,
PR Lane,
right? And that was put in because at the time the hospital didn't have any parking, right? And subsequently, the hospital solved their parking issues, but
But the parking restrictions for the.
has not been changed. And if you can,
Businesses.
hold on.
12 to 2.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point I'm going to make. So in Stratford, where you got Westfield, you got 10 till 2. Whereas in St Regis Lane, it's all day.
Okay.
It's a carryover and it's not been changed. Could you take that away and have a look at it, please?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll take it away, yes.
Yeah. Just to summarise, I think it was a really good meeting. Lot of debate. Not enough questions, I'll say. We'll deal with that later, you lot. What I've got in terms of actions and takeaways was we're going to do another consultation. We're going to use co-create. That's going to happen after May. We are going to take away and look at the large vehicle charging regime.
You mean weight-based?
Weight-based, yeah. The EQIA, and I think points were made by the committee, needs to be updated in a number of areas, especially to reflect the impact on families. And there was a commitment to do that post-May. Carlene's question was to highlight the cost to our own fleet of these charges. There was a piece about repair vehicles from housing associations.
For housing
tenants, and maybe the housing association should be buying the visitor permits and not getting the resident to pony up for a visit for a limit. And the last one was to review a sort of outdated parking in Prince Regis Lane.
I've got 2 more.
Oh, go on.
Just keeping notes, Chair.
Oh. I've been bested by the cabinet member.
We're talking about, you wanted to get some information from the climate people team about the gas boilers.
Yeah, gas boilers, roads.
And then also for a written response to Shantu's question about resources and implications on air quality monitoring.
Excellent.
Only missed 2, Chair.
I can't be perfect all the time, can I?
Not all the time.
No.
Certainly need some clarity.
No. We're going to move on. No, I'm going to move on, right? We've got this here time. First of all, can I thank Michael for logging in? You can go and enjoy your holiday now.
Cheers and chips.
Cheers. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Bye.
And
all the best.
Sarah and John, thank you for that session. We're going to do the next session now.
We could go now.
No, I've super glued your seats.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, I'm going to go into the next bit. We've got sustainable transport and major projects and highways. And how do you want to give an overview politically? And
I think
you guys want to.
I think you've got a very comprehensive report here, which I hope you've enjoyed and read. And I think that probably team will probably add a bit to that.
And just
John probably may want to say something.
And just to echo that, thank you for the papers. You know, often we don't say that enough. A good set of papers. Lots of questions have been answered. So continue and well done. John, did you want to say?
Yeah, so
Sorry, just before this, it's just you said major projects and highways. I think the next thing on the agenda is the sustainable transport.
No, I said sustainable transport, and then we've got major project. I think what we'll do, we'll sort of blend in, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
one of the things I found in this role is that success is rewarded. Our communications with the Mayor of London and TfL is that we've done so good in the Royal Docks corridor and the Romford Road scheme that has unlocked other sources of funding, which have enabled us to progress with projects.
That's really good. You must have read my mind. I had a question on the phasing and budget, so really good point. How did you want to divvy it up, guys? And girls, sorry.
We've got 2 lots. So effectively Charles is going to deal with transport, and as you said, it will blend into 2 in all fairness. And I'll deal with major projects and highways, if that's okay.
Charles,
Thank you, Chair. My colleagues here will help me present on the low traffic neighborhoods as we go. Start to talk about the our sustainable transport strategy. Was generally developed to support the local plan review and also to help us prioritize council's actions to support more transport pattern. So the way this is structured, for those that have read the sustainable transport strategy, there are 5 objectives that go with the strategy, and those 5 are to do with the enabling sustainable housing and employment growth, to improve health outcomes for residents and visitors. I think we all know that there is currently 30 minutes walking, especially children, to spend more walking activities. And the third one is to deliver improvements to transport network, tackle the climate emergency. Somebody mentioned about healthy school streets and others that come under that. So ensure that Newham is an inclusive transport network, and also to support measures to deliver a network of well-connected neighborhoods to improve access across the whole of Newham. And in terms of our sustainable transport strategy, it's well aligned with the policies from the GLA and TFO, and particularly the Mayor's transport strategy, London environmental strategy, healthy streets, as well as, and these strategies, they focus generally on creating a healthier, more sustainable environment through active travel and improved air quality. And just to give like a brief definition of what active travel is, basically it's travel that involves physical activity, walking, cycling, wheeling, and scooting. And when residents participate in these, basically it results in healthier lifestyles, traffic congestion, and improved quality. And in terms of how our strategies embedded in our initiatives, generally we use our sustainable transport strategy to draw up projects for a local implementation plan, as well as the active and sustainable travel capital program. So from sustainable transport strategy, there are 8 actions that were defined, and those actions fall into active travel. This is to do with enhancing cycling and walking infrastructure to encourage people to encourage more people to choose walking and cycling. And then the second one is to do with the expansion of the cycle hire schemes to increase accessibility and convenience. And also the third one is to do with public transport to improve the reliability and coverage of sustainable transport, as well as to support the transition of our residents towards electric vehicles. And then also the sustainable talking of promoting car sharing schemes such as car clubs and the like. And number 6, we're talking of safe transport network.
Yeah.
Basically, we implement measures to ensure that our network is safe. And we also have behavior change initiatives, basically to support all the projects that we implement.
Okay.
And then so the 8th one is to develop strategies that reduce the environmental impact of freight and delivery vehicles or services. And we have projects such as cargo bikes that go with that. Sorry, Chair.
No, it's good.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good overview there. We'll take some questions from the members. Dantu, Simon. Oh, what? Dantu, 1 question. Simon, 1 question. Carleen.
So I think now is falling under this agenda. Part of the border strategy that aim to create and safer streets. 50 schools are currently included in the HSS program, with the plan to extend to more, I think, 10 schools. I think, by 26. Okay, so what obstacles are hindering increasing the HS program in each year?
What obstacles in the Healthy Schools programme?
What obstacles?
And why we cannot expand
Yeah.
schools, more schools in
Okay.
categories in HS?
Doing three at a time or just one at a time?
Do three at a time. So,
Okay.
so it's Healthy School Streets. Why can't we expand?
Yeah.
Simon?
Thank you, Chair. Right, I think I heard the word scooter, but I'll leave that alone for the minute. The question is, since we said that we're taking on the climate emergency, what percentage increase in the borough have we of cycling and walking? And should we be encouraging supplementary with it?
No.
Encouraging scooters when.
Nice try. I got you, Carleen.
I have a political question, Sarah. So, just thinking about the active travel piece. How have we tied in with the other policies within the council and what we know around young people and the safety element around serious youth violence and being able to travel from one side of the borough to the next? How has that impacted or added to this piece of work?
Okay.
It's very good, the active travel, but that doesn't meet everybody.
Political overview and then we'll pass on.
Okay.
Experts.
So in terms of obstacles, one of the things I found that I probably,
You might speak a bit loud.
yes. So in terms of obstacles, one of the things I actually found was that Healthy School Streets in particular are actually much more popular than I would have given them credit for.
Yeah.
And actually there's relatively few political obstacles or obstacles from resistance from residents. The main one is actually more of a practical one, and that's the design of the roads. So for example, there's a school in Stratford where the main gates are on the main road, and we can't put a Healthy School Street there because buses, and it's the main thoroughfare. And the only way we can actually install a Healthy School Street if the school moves the exit to a side road. And so actually, our main target is that chances are we would fulfill our target of making sure every healthy school street that can be a healthy school street will become so by the end of the year. But unfortunately not because of that. Not every school can be a healthy school street, if that makes sense.
Can I just add to that? Because up until, I think it was last year or the year before, schools opted in.
Really?
No, you had to, they
opted into the program.
They opted in. Now, they have to opt out and they have to give a really considered reason as to why they are opting out. And the other obstacle, and I could say this, is the number of schools who think that their teaching staff, and it's always the teaching staff, it's never the TAs or anybody like that, think that they should automatically get a free pass. And we have more arguments about that. So one school, I won't give the name, wanted 60 parking permit things when their car park only actually holds 30.
It's our policy not to give.
Yeah.
And that is no exemptions, no special pleading, no.
We can, for certain, like they have to really make the case, so.
They have a disability.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that written down?
Yes, yeah.
Great. So, because what we wouldn't want is special pleading.
No, and.
Great policy on it.
And Hamza is very, very clear on that, and actually is supported by John and I to be even harder.
Brilliant. And Simon's question?
So it's a supplementary one.
Answer to Simon's.
So Simon's was, I don't have the answer to that, but I'm sure somebody does.
Do you have Simon's question?
I mean, I kind of got confused there because he was asking two questions.
Oh, shall I re-say the question? Thank you. Since we said we were a climate emergency, that's what we're doing, and we've got the sustainable transport stuff going in place. over the last 3 or 4 years, I believe that made that. What percentage increase of cycling has happened?
How have we performed? How have we performed?
Which point to another point? So is it from?
Started it. Well, since we declared Brighton as a climate emergency borough, and we started looking probably at least 2020 as a sustainable, get more people cycling.
So from 2020 till.
Yeah.
What percentage increase have we had?
Do we have that?
Not the increase. Thank you. We can take back the question on the increase since 2020, but we actually monitor the percentage of people walking, cycling, and using public transport.
Okay. Just, if you haven't got the answer, fine. Just send
We've got it for this year. We haven't got it for 2020.
Yeah, if we can, so it's a table, you buy some. It's a plastic table, and what we'll do, we'll stick it in the record. Good question. Carly's question, how do we overlay issues around youth on our current sustainable transport?
I think that's a really complex question. And I think it involves not just the council, but it involves TfL. And it also is about perception sometimes as well. So depending on who you talk to, when they want you to be able to use one youth zone, then people can travel right across the borough. But when it suits, it doesn't. So I do think that there is something that we as environment and sustainable transport need to work closer with community safety.
Yeah.
And it's a one council approach, because it isn't just any one thing. It's lighting. It's, if we look at lighting on housing estates, etc. So I think it's a bigger question than about sustainable transport, because
just to add to that, and actually, and that's to thank John, you may remember, I went on a walkabout with the Sarah Burnell's, me and Josh went on a walkabout. Sarah Burnell have a school community safety group.
Yeah.
And we went around Stratford with them, which was completely eye-opening.
Yeah.
Right? Because the bus stop outside the Prince Eddie, as one of the girls said, that's the dangerous bus stop. And like, what are you talking about? Because that's where the men say uncomfortable things. And we walked to the park, and it was, but one of the things we identified was they wanted a form of healthy school street. And John, thank you. John was very good at getting the funding for them to move their entrance and move the road round, right? So I think it's a two-way thing.
Yeah.
Every school has a community sort of group, and maybe talking to them and involving schools in the consultation.
Yeah.
Maybe as simple as that. As saying to,
I mean, I do think that most secondary schools have it. I think it's, and that's where people think that that's where the issue is. I think it's actually in primary schools, becoming more important in primary schools.
Also,
I appreciate what was said. However, I don't want the essence of my question to be lost.
No, I'm
talking specifically around youth safety and serious youth violence.
And
I'm talking about the overlay between our policies around that subject and this policy in regards to sustainability.
I think the answer.
And moving to active travel, it's got to be safe for all our young people, no matter what.
And I do think that is more. It's not just the responsibility, and it actually means that we have to start working across the council.
Local plan issue.
Yeah, so the point wasn't lost, Carly. It's just, I think it was a considered response from Sarah to take that away, and so there's a lot there. And and I think it can be done. I think it's involving writing out to schools can be helped.
Yeah.
And also there are small things that can be done as well. Next set of questions, I've got Sabia, I've got Nate, and I've got Thelma.
Just a quick question around the impact assessment on this one as well. In terms with active travel, have we consulted or have you spoken to people who are disproportionately impacted by this, be elderly, young families and disabled with the active travel, for example, or someone with protective characteristic? I don't know if you remember in Newham, there was a time when Muslim women got attacked with acid outside a bus stop. It's not only about dark places. I was punched outside Plaster Station 9 in the morning for wearing a hijab. So in terms of I know we should all be part of an active travel, but because of certain protective characteristics, we are also targeted. So in this, did we speak to people like myself, people with protective characteristics, elderly, people who are disabled, who might not able to travel, might not have a disability badge? Have we spoken to them as well? In terms.
Thank you. As part of developing our sustainable transport strategy, and also when we're doing our LEAP strategy, we actually did an equality impact assessment, and also took into consideration feedback that we received from different organizations and people groups that we talked to across Newham.
Charles, can I just supplement on that? I think the question is more, we know you do, but I think the question is more you how. So what groups do you talk to? Do you talk to, you know, in the earlier session, we spoke about the co-create groups. Do you speak to them? Do you speak?
The co-production.
Co-production groups. Do you speak to the groups?
Yeah.
Or the question is, could you be better at speaking to those groups?
We could all be better at it, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, we could be better. When we did this, I think there was, I can't remember the name of the organization you spoke to. Is it Access for All?
Yeah.
Transport for All. Basically, that's an organization that represents different.
Is that, sorry to talk, is that in London or is it Newham based?
We basically spoke to them regarding Newham.
Right.
Yeah, regarding Newham in terms of the different people groups. So they have contact with the different organizations, and they would collect feedback for us.
Okay, right. I
was gonna say that if you went back in the annals of time, and Carleen will remember Balfour from Newham Access for Rights for Disabled People. Well,
Yes.
so I mean, we would actively engage with that group, and you know, I would still say, has this place been belled before I go into a cafe? But you know, we don't have that level of engagement. Those groups don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But I do think, I mean, we could always be better at consultation.
Yeah, and also it links back to the question Carleen was asking. You know, if you wrote out to the schools, obviously you've got them and you'll get their nuanced view as a very simple thing to do. Nate.
Thanks, Chair. I want to talk about the rollout of the borough 20 mph programme, which I strongly support, and about how effective it's been. So I know it's not in our power to enforce. I'm thinking of but I see boundary roads on Stratford High Street and Country Mills Lane, Woodland Forest, where there are signs at the boundaries. And I'm looking in this document and I don't see any measurement about the impact on speeds, like are we actually seeing a reduction in speeds? And just because it's not in our power to issue fines, that doesn't mean it's not in our power to build cameras, for example.
But the question is, how do you monitor the introduction of 20
How do we monitor, but also not just monitor, there are things that people do to improve compliance, even though you don't have enforcement power.
Okay, let them ask the question.
Yeah, we actually have a program to carry out surveys across all of our network to measure compliance.
Yeah, and that says it in the report. We don't have the outcome.
Nate,
Yeah.
Nate, go on. Nate, let me finish.
Yeah, we just concluded the 20 mph rollout in December. So basically we're in the initial stages of that rollout, and we'll be able to talk about feedback in due course as we progress.
So, but it's been going on for a while now. We don't have any numbers on it so far. Is that what you're saying?
Hasn't been going for that long.
It's been going on for, I think, close to 2 years now.
No,
No,
the rollout has been going on for about, we only finished a few months ago.
In December, early December.
Phases, the north of the
No.
hasn't.
Okay, I think it hasn't.
So it has been in phases, but we would start monitoring off because.
You didn't have any monitoring on the rollout of the first phase on compliance?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay,
Okay.
Jamie?
One of the really important things will be the impact on the killed and seriously injured figures. The killed and seriously injured figures will be the thing we will be looking at most.
Killed and
The injured figures for road collisions, we'd expect to see those improve significantly in 20 mph. That will be our key measurement. And, you know, we would expect to see less killed and seriously injured as a result of 21 up.
I mentioned.
Hold on a minute, hold on. So the question was, how do we measure, the question was put, how do you measure the effectiveness of the 20-mile-an-hour zone? Councillor Higgins is saying do effectively really put cameras up and measure it, but you're saying the true test is the killed and right.
That would be our main benefit.
Yeah.
Clearly, that's a very strong driver for us. Those figures will take quite a while to come through because they're collated by TfL, but we would expect to see an improvement.
Okay, just a question there. If it's monitored by the Metropolitan Police, is it not Metropolitan Police cameras?
Yeah.
Should be monitoring at 20-mile-an-hour rather than, I think as Councillor Higgins is saying, the council should be.
The police and TfL have the enforcement powers
Not us.
to enforce the 20 miles an hour. There's certain things within our control. In certain locations, we can have physical measures such as curb build outs, speed cushions to actually physically slow the traffic. And if we're not getting enough compliance, the other thing we can also do in certain locations is community speed watch.
Okay.
I'm aware of these things, but I asked about the boundary roads. So I'm just aware of two where there aren't signs, so Stratford High Street where you come into the borough and on Temple Mills Lane where you come in from Waltham Forest, where the speed limit changes. There's no sign indicating a change of speed.
Okay, so an action, right, okay. Let's move to action rather than a debate. But the action is
You look at those specific.
increase signage on the boundary roads to the borough, which is Barking and Hackney, number one, increase signage. I think the other point is, and it was a point that Jamie made, perhaps there needs to be a small, in future documents going forward, a short paragraph clearly stating, you know, the police monitor, the police are.
It does say that in the document. I know what the Metro.
But what is it you're asking then?
What I'm saying is it doesn't matter if we don't get the money from the fine or if we can't enforce the fine, we can still work with partners. And for example, right, funding if it helps bring down speeding to build speed cameras. I know that other boroughs are considering doing this. Like, is this something that we have considered, or is it just a no because it's not our power?
Have we considered working with, question is, have we considered working with neighbouring boroughs to improve?
Or partners.
The partners.
The Met Police and TfL, yeah.
What are they for them to provide us with funding?
No, but what matters is whether if people are going to speed,
Yeah.
going to be caught. Clearly, that is not properly enforced in this country.
No.
I think that's clear. There is an argument between the local authorities and the police about like, well, we can't enforce it, so we're not building cameras, but we're still responsible to residents when residents get hit by speeding traffic. I'm not that concerned by who gets the money when there's a fine. I'm concerned about whether there's a camera.
Okay, John?
And Chair, as far as I know, there are very few speeding cameras.
Okay.
I don't think speeding would stop.
Doesn't stop.
Hold on. The point has been made.
Stop speeding.
Number of times. I think we have to move to a conclusion. Right. John, Sarah and Martha, I think want to come.
Concluding remarks. Jamie would know the specific technical laws behind it, but the conversations I had with my peers on London Tech is that actually the main emphasis is that we're talking to government about taking over those enforcement powers, and actually the commissioner of the London Met traditionally has been against that. This current commissioner actually has indicated that he's open to it. So there's actually some movement of us actually taking over enforcement of it. In terms of the technical, I think even if we had cameras, I'm not sure we can actually pass that evidence on to London Met Police unless it's a London Met Police camera. I mean,
that's correct. Yeah, we can work with Transport for London on known sites and sites that concern us, and we'd say to them that, you know, we've got X number of resident complaints or concerns, or we've had this number of actual collisions, therefore can you consider working with the police and camera? As Councillor Lawrence has said, there is an idea about local authority having the power to almost decriminalise it in the same way that parking was decriminalised, would require an act of parliament, so something that would take a long time. But there is perhaps an argument if the police haven't got adequate resources to enforce the speed limits, particularly 20 miles an hour through the borough, that it's something that maybe local authorities should be given the powers to do.
Because we did, didn't we, Jamie, Albert Way near Dockside, that was a racing ground. And we,
Yes, yeah.
and so we enforce, signs there, that doesn't, and that kicks in about 11 o'clock at night or 10:30.
No entry, yeah.
Whereas it's basically, cars can't go up there at all, so.
Martha, did you want to come in?
Just say, cameras is not the only way to increase compliance to 20 miles per hour. And as Charles mentioned, we have a plan to run a survey borough-wide. I think that is going to actually give us the information that we need in order to say what we should do next. So how much speeding, which location and so on. We also running, we want to run a campaign for 20 miles per hour borough-wide. So there are different ways. Active choice schemes, reduction of carriageway, that's another way of reducing speeding. There are many ways. But again, I think a survey would be, we will be able to highlight what roads they have the issue where we haven't achieved compliance and what.
So what I'm hearing is it's the Met Police responsibility to enforce on the speeding. There's things we can do, but it's about working with partners and getting them to themselves. And it's about monitoring the build and serious accident thing. John has mentioned there are some road design issues we can do. Maybe it's about pulling these things together in a short note, saying what our responsibilities are, what we are, let's say, legally liable to do, and what we can do by influence and pressure of our partners, and mention what Martha said, all the future things we're doing in the future. Because I think that
when we've got the compliance data that we were told that we don't have yet,
right,
on this, like, can that come back to us?
Yeah, and I think obviously if we were to I think what it is, there's a lot of elements there. If we brought them together with the data, that we can see there's a sort of policy there on a policy emerging, and the data will tell us what to do. And that's a fair where we are. Right, so I've got Antu, then I've got Carly.
I think what we need with the 20 miles per hour is more like buy-in rather than enforcement. So for example, with the Healthy School Street, there's a lot of statistics there about the impact has been very good, reduction in traffic and everything, and excellent feedback from residents and schools. That's really, really great. But with the 20 miles per hour, I can see that there's a lot of community engagement, there's consultation, surveys, drop-in, but there's no information on any feedback. Have we gotten any feedback from residents because we actually need their buy-in for this to work?
I mean, it's like comparing apples and pears, isn't it? Because healthy school streets, there is no traffic. You know what I mean? If you live in a healthy school street, you can come in and out, but there's no through traffic. And there's very few of our roads where there are schools where you could get over 20 miles an hour. I think that because we haven't yet, I mean, our biggest impact on seeing whether 20 mile per hour works is, as Jamie said, it's about deaths and accidents. And that may be, you know, a really harsh thing, but actually that's one of our KPIs, is to see a reduction. I mean, should go down to zero. I can't imagine it would, but, you know, so they will be, but actually the majority of people, I think if you want to do 20 miles an hour, you'll comply. But there are, I mean, we haven't got to go very far. You've only got to go outside the gate here where they see racing down the Barking Road. And I think that it will take us a little while to get any hard data. It's easy for healthy school streets because they're there and you have to comply. You don't have a choice. You know.
Asking more about, not necessarily about compliance and monitoring, but more about feedback. So for example, what do residents think about 20 miles per hour on Barking Road?
Well, they don't like it.
Yeah, but once you know.
Hold on.
Yeah.
All right, we need to move to, it's got to be an action. Could we not put it in the resident survey?
Yeah, we could.
Is there a question in the resident?
Which is what Martine was on about.
Exactly, so we can do it in the resident survey. Santu.
Hi, it was my main question. Now it's coming as a supplementary after Thelma. We understand that 20-mile speed limit policy is effective in preventing accident in residential areas. How realistic is this when this policy has been applied to main road, like a Barking Road, may be more challenging to enforce the speed limit, potentially leading to more issues?
John? So, I know because I've got some complaints about it. The Met Police do have some cameras on Barking Road and are actually enforcing at least a part of it. I'm sorry. I was going to answer the other part of your question. So would you mind repeating it for me?
I'm just saying, because as you know, 20 miles.
Found it. Remembered it. You clicked it.
Go, John.
So, what I would say is that, Jamie and the team showed me a map of where the main injuries and deaths were, and actually a lot of them were on the main road. So Green Street by the bowling pub, for example, is one of the hot spots. So actually we do have to enforce it on the main road as well, because that's where injuries are. But what I would also say is that another benefit of 20 mile an hour is actually improves traffic flow.
Sorry, John, it wasn't my question. I said it shouldn't apply like a road, like in Barking Road. I understand you can apply this policy on the residential area, but
You don't think it should apply on the main roads?
it shouldn't.
But I'm answering your question, councillor. I am.
Hold on. I'm confused. Are you saying a 20-mile-an-hour limit should not apply on main roads, A roads like the Barking Road?
Well, it would cause.
Is it yes or no? Are you,
Yes, I think it would cause even more issues.
you said it shouldn't apply?
No, not on the.
Okay, I think that's a comment, all right? On the stated policy of the council.
Park that one, guys.
Yeah, the stated policy of the council is 20 mile an hour.
I actually can answer her question. So to go back to it, the other issue is that, as I mentioned, one of the main hotspots for injuries and deaths are areas and junctions in the main road. So if we want to secure that metric and decrease the amount of injuries and deaths and fatalities due to car injuries, we have to include the main roads. What I would also say is that another benefit of 20 miles an hour, which isn't advertised as much, is that strangely enough, by slowing down traffic, you actually improve traffic flow. So you get less traffic jams, and actually more often than not, people will get to their journeys much more quicker. It sounds counterintuitive, I know, but there is evidence.
Okay, now the last question on this section, Arlene's,
Thank you.
and we'll move on to the major projects and highway section. So the last question on this section, Carleen, is you.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to what Nate was saying in regards to 20 miles per hour and so on and so forth, and I kind of understand where he's coming from. So without him saying it, what he's actually saying is there are neighbouring boroughs like Hackney and Islington that have.
Havering and.
No, not them one.
Are we opening up?
No, that have cameras. So everyone that knows, that drives, knows that as soon as they drive into Hackney, you're at 20 miles per hour and you get a ticket if you're at 21 or 22 miles per hour. That's what he's saying. So I guess the reality is, what he's specifically talking about is those A roads, like the A12, that people are coming off of and at speed are coming into, for instance, Olympic Park, which is where the ward in which he covers, at high speeds. Is there something that can be done about that? We all know by reducing speed. Now, let's be realistic. In Newham, you can't really drive around this borough at more than 20 miles per hour anyway, because there is so much traffic, unless you're driving at night.
Answer it in the previous thing, because we resolved to go back and write down the policy as to what we do, what we can do more, and using the data from the survey, which Martina and Nate.
Okay, can I just go back to slightly what I'm at? My point is, we can ask residents what they think about 20 miles per hour. We can look and see, but if we don't have the tools in which to monitor.
Okay, I think that's
the reality is actually, is there a possibility for Cabinet to think about how we petition whoever it is that we have to petition about getting more cameras in specific areas of the borough in order for you to have the tools to measure? Because reality says, and Jamie said something earlier on, the way in which the reality of this is that we will only see it via deaths on our street. Yeah, I remember having a conversation with Jamie about the incident that happened in Beckton, right, where a young man died coming off the road. The reality is we don't want that to happen. If it was my child, if it was your family member, that would be not enough. So my question is what can we do as a council to implement those cameras that are being requested that happen elsewhere, so we can actually monitor what it is that's being asked?
Thank you, Chair. Just to answer the camera question specifically, I think Ben probably would have been better placed coming from Hackney.
Now, Craig.
I know, but I spoke to him about this last week.
Hold on, let him off.
The cameras that you're referring to in Hackney are on TfL run roads, they're red routes, they're TLRNs, which is why they're air, because they've had the power to install those. Obviously, we don't have that power here, which is fundamentally the difference between one.
In the previous question, a really good thing.
So we can put.
I think it needs to be codified, right? Because the reason why there's cameras,
Thank you.
TfL has provided
to manage that network
on their roads, right?
On your street.
So the question is, there's two things. On a TfL boundary road, what happens? And on a Newham road, what happens, what we can do? I think what we need is a clear statement of policy, because I was not aware of that situation. That's quite a key piece. I think in order to go forward, we need it codified. So on a TfL road, on the boundaries, the reason why they've got cameras, and when I go to the Lee Bridge Road, I get ticketed there. So maybe that's a TfL road, right? Maybe that's the reason why.
Shouldn't go.
Yeah, so let's put that down in, when would that will come back to us at some point? Just
New work programme.
in the new work programme. Can we note that down in the new work programme?
I was going to ask, so, right, and it'll come up in the next bit, because it'll be infrastructure.
Highways.
What, and
highways.
And highways. Because one of the biggest issues that we had in doing the changes to Romford Road is the fact that there'll be bus lanes which will have cameras.
Yes.
Of course, they're not interested in the bus lanes. It's the fact that they won't be able to park their cars in the bus lanes because there'll be cameras. So it's about working within those as well.
Right, John?
Very quickly.
John, then Jamie, nothing. Right, go on.
Very quickly, Scrutiny actually had looked into this before. So when I first was appointed to the executive around May, June 2023, crime and antisocial behaviour scrutiny looked at road safety. That's where I learned a lot. So I would advise scrutiny committee members to look at those past reports where they actually talk about police powers and what Newham Council can and cannot.
So, can we send it as an action to the committee, Aaron, and set a minute with him?
Beckton Road is
I think that useful discussion. I think they need to codify what the situation is, and within that, what happens on the TfL roads, what happens on our roads, and the other.
Like a little glossary type thing.
Yeah, and also what's the art of the possible? So in those new, there may be roads which are a bit problematic. If we were to put 10 cameras, how much would that cost? It becomes a proposal budget bid, and that goes into the sausage.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily to how much it would cost, Terry, is actually, what do we do with that information?
Absolutely right. But I think let's put that on a policy. Points well made, good debate. Okay. Nate, did you want to make a final comment on this area?
I have a sustainable transport policy here that has targets, and we haven't really talked full about the targets and the delivery against the
But
targets.
we spent a lot of time on cameras, didn't we? We'll move on.
Yeah, just on the targets, it's
just a brief question, Nate.
On delivery of those, so electric vehicle charging.
I had that.
We want 3,000 of these by 2030, we only have 300 now, so that's more than doubling the current number every year between now and.
That almost next year.
Oh, yeah.
So.
We'll hit that target, that 3,000 by next year.
Okay, I want to close this bit down. All right, hold on. I'm going to move on. I have a session to do, and we've got 20 minutes. I'm going to move. No.
About people dying on our.
I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on. Why don't you write it down? Not a question. Did you just to the officer? We've got 20 minutes left rather than half an hour.
30, Chair, under the Constitution.
9 o'clock.
9:30 under the Constitution. I've just read it.
Okay, what is the question you want to answer?
It says 0 casualties killed or seriously injured by 2041. 99, nothing in here about how likely we are to hit Vision Zero. What's our progression towards that?
Sorry, that's a question that I can back with an answer.
Okay, lovely. And one question from me on LTNs, this section, right? Balmoral Road LTN. When is it coming?
We don't know, sorry,
No, you carry on.
You don't know.
we don't know.
So, one of the things that we want to do is we made a series of changes to the LTN design, which we need to take back into consultation. So this is the same consultation that we did in West Ham. Unfortunately, that consultation costs as much or a little bit more actually than it costs to actually deliver the scheme itself. We went to TfL to see if they can get funding to deliver that consultation as part of the wider scheme. They said no, and we're now looking into the carbon offset fund, the feasibility and the consultation to deliver the scheme.
Okay,
We want to do it with strapped for money.
how much extra?
So, these are figures like.
Yeah.
You know,
Figures.
so my understanding of the West Ham LTNs,
So one meeting,
please.
Simon, I can actually hear you from here. Whisper.
I think it costs like 120, a little bit more, to deliver an LTN. The West Ham LTN probably costs roughly the same, maybe a little bit more. I think
150,000 per LTN average.
What was that, sorry?
For an LTN average, how much does it cost?
What did you consultation?
250.
250.
That's for the LTN, but for the
Feasibility studies, traffic monitoring, air quality,
And
engagement, and into an experimental.
Right, so we approved the LTN.
No.
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 Budget.
Approved. It was in feasibility.
It was never
No.
Balmoral. I thought
No.
Went out to consultation, but it was never approved.
it went up to consultation, then it came back,
It came back and it was paused while we made some changes.
and now 250.
And then we were hoping that TfL would fund it, but they haven't. So we're now going to the carbon offset fund, which is apparently like I wouldn't say rolling money, but
If we don't get the money from the carbon,
but we will have to pause it until we have got the money.
wow, okay. And there was a petition to full council recently.
Yeah,
Have we gone back and written to the residents?
yeah. What you mean from Balmoral for the
Yeah,
Jesse?
yeah.
Yeah.
But formally, we've gone back and up.
Oh, yes, yeah, and John has met her and Craig met her as well, so.
150.
And I think the mayor met them, I don't know, but I think she was going to, or she's offered to.
A lot of changes, right.
If you think about it, it's about the people power for knocking doors, leaflets. I mean, it's not cheap.
Yeah. So.
And that's a big area.
So when I mentioned West Ham LTN being a gold standard of consultation, I wasn't about, like I have asked colleagues in other boroughs about it and told them about the results. The fact that we actually engaged with people equivalent to half the, had conversations with people equivalent to half the turnout of a local election. We leafleted every door. That's the gold standard in consultation, but that doesn't come cheap.
Okay, just a question.
I think it's about 5,000.
That came back to you?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's also then, of course,
okay.
what also had to bear in mind the level of vandalism.
Okay, two things there. On the consultation, roughly how many were for it and how many were against it?
Well, I think I'm right in saying, and I may be wrong, but a large percentage of the people who signed the petition, are we talking about the original petition?
Yeah, the original consultation of Balmoral Road.
Well, that was, I think quite a considerable number, but those who were against it, we were not able to even verify that they lived in Newham or actually were existing.
And one of the added question, at the last meeting on air quality, what came up, we asked for an impact assessment of, I think the goal of the borough is 80% of the borough, 88 in my head. 80% of the borough is LTN, right? There is no impact assessment whatsoever we could find on that. Bearing in mind a very interesting example on one LTN, a few changes cost us £250,000. If we are
No, the changes aren't causing this.
the work around that.
And the whole package of the consultation,
Everything. A few changes and a consultation, £250,000. But if we're going to 80% of the borough,
yeah.
that is not only is a financial implication, the resident implication, and there's a road movement implication on the borough.
Well, there is something called aspirational.
Well, I'm dealing out of realism, because if I
know.
Brilliant, bit Martin. So my question is, could you link up with your air quality colleagues? They took it away back to us to provide that piece of work, but it's down to you guys to produce that, right? Because we are concerned as a committee, 80% of the borough in the LTN is a massive shift and change, financial implication, which I don't think have been flagged within the borough at all. It doesn't appear on the borough's risk register. So you're committing us to future capital, future risk, but you're not telling the organisation you've captured that risk.
Sorry, Chair, just, I think it's in the actual presentation. The majority, I think most of all the schemes are externally funded. So TfL pays for it.
That's fine. That's one part. But if 80% of the borough is LTNs, the traffic movements are different, right? And that has an impact.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether your local authority has captured that impact and look at the risk and the implications of that. So really what I'm saying, can you link up with your air quality colleagues who took it away to talk to you guys?
Yeah.
So I'm asking you to go back and talk to them so you join up in the middle. Is that fair enough?
Chair, when you say 80%, are you talking about because the paperwork talks to 80%
Sorry.
in the
Yeah, the aspiration. Yeah.
aspiration?
Yeah.
But we're currently at 44.
44, that's correct.
Just a point of clarity, John. I know you refer a lot to West Ham LTN, but from my understanding, and we've had several conversations about this, most of the residents opposed to it, and we had a petition at full council. Constantly get bombarded with email, even though I'm not in the borough. But I think the understanding is the residents who live in the area are against it. And I do remember asking a question that was there any death or anything else that led to the LTN? But I know we have.
It's only there on a temporary basis.
Right.
I know.
Station is, I mean.
So out of the residents within the area.
What, the West Ham one?
Balmoral?
West Ham.
The West Ham one.
Most are actually supportive.
Okay.
They were against it.
Well, they weren't on the consultation.
Hey.
We can't have it both ways.
It can't be binary, it's either yes or no, right? So can we, write to the committee with the results of the consultation on Balmoral and West Ham, and that'll just close it.
Forget about Balmoral, because it's.
West Ham.
But West Ham.
Can we have Grange in this?
You can shake your head all you like. The consultation showed.
And two.
Majority of.
Dan two's patiently waited.
I send you yes to you.
Hold on, you two, take it outside.
We even had
Very gentle and polite.
saying that.
Dan, Sarah.
It's shops. There are no shops.
Yeah, just I'm wondering, because I was quite confident, are you on the next agenda yet?
Dan two.
Are you in?
I thought you're going to next agenda, that's why.
What would you like to do, Shanti? Where are you?
Don't ask that.
That's fine. I think you are not yet, because still we are there.
Yeah, well, I want to glide onto major projects and highways.
On, that's fine.
I'm going to glide onto major projects and highways. Is that okay? Right. Going to move on to major projects and highways.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Thank you, Mark.
Would you like the first question, Chan?
I haven't even had the presentation yet.
No,
Don't need a presentation, back.
I'm lost in the forest of. Right, hold on. Chan two.
Yes.
Stay together in the pack, right?
Who's this, Chair?
I am losing this. So
Should have comfort.
going to make the presentation on or introduce some remarks on major projects on highways.
Chair.
Going to bring us back to order.
I won't run through all the slides. I just give you a heads up of what we're trying to achieve, really, our major projects. We've got aspirations to deliver a whole vast range of major projects across the borough. We're currently delivering 11. If you look at the first slide there, it's got a little small map. It's probably very small for you to see. We've got it in colour. They should be colour coded. We're trying to deliver at this moment in time where we've got funding in place and corporate governance in place and approval from Cabinet and Council and from our key stakeholders, and being through the process of public consultation, stakeholder consultation, quality impact assessment, I must say, as well, for all these schemes. And they've all been signed off and we're in the process of delivering those. Now, the stages that we're in delivery will vary across those schemes. Some of them will be literally just at the concept stage where we're just starting out, and some of them, as Councillor Morris alluded to earlier on, Royal Docks Corridor and Muffin, are nearing the middle and the end of their delivery stage, effectively. We've got another 4 or 5 schemes that we have classed as major projects, which we're looking to deliver in future years, and they're in the pipeline at the moment. We're discussing with our stakeholders, whether that be external or internal, because we have some funding that we'll take from internal as well through Section 106. And through the Carbon Offset Fund. We'd be looking to try and take those forward for delivery and packaging up some funding to take those forward into the design stages, and delivery at a later date, much down the line. I suppose just to give you an idea of the reasons we're putting in these major projects, the majority of them is obviously to tie into the sustainable transport strategy. And it ties into some of the discussions around the 20 mile an hour. And Martina alluded to it earlier on. By narrowing a carriageway down to something that doesn't look like a motorway, generally bring down speeds. If you bring down speeds, you bring down accidents, and it's a way of enforcing that 20 mile an hour that we've talked about as well. But with that extra space on the carriageway, what we're looking for is increase our street green and tree canopy coverage, so we can introduce some shaded areas for people as they walk through the borough. Also help bring down the actual temperatures in those areas as well, in some of those hotspots. And the majority of our infrastructure is black tarmac, and it takes heat and it lets out that heat throughout the day. If we have more street trees, the carriageway will actually heat up less and it will give off less heat, and it's a better environment for local traveling through the area. And obviously, one of the other key factors is moving some of that carriageway space that is no longer necessarily needed in some of our roads that were designed for industrial areas, and moving it towards green space and also cycle tracks. So we've got a lot of cycle facilities that we're putting in to help move people who want to use pedals or whatever we want to call them.
Scooters.
I'm not going to mention. It's not just cyclists. They're multi-use. People can use them for tracks. But that's just to give you a flavour of what it is. They do cost quite a lot of money. The majority of them are actually funded from external. And I will say external funding. So I will say that because we have invested in our infrastructure, the likes of keeping it moving over the years, we've shown to external funding authorities that we can actually deliver. We can deliver to programme and because we've been able to do that on our major projects over the last 8 or 9 years, we're very successful in getting money in the door for our residents and spending the money as wisely as possibly as we can. I think the only real thing to say is, and it's one of the things that was on one of the Chloe's, was what are our challenges with regards to spending? And generally the challenge is our revenue budget to maintain all this great infrastructure we're putting out there. And that is a challenge, and we are changing that and how we look at it. And we're working with other departments in the council about putting in bids for growth bids for our revenue streams. And that's something, as we deliver all these great infrastructure projects, we are going to have to look at further down the line in future years, what we spend on our revenue. Just to take the 20 mile an hour alone, we put in, I'm going to pick up a number because I don't really know the number of heart. I think it's about 8,000 or 9,000 20 mile an hour roundels. So to replace those in future years, in about 4 or 5 years, we'll probably double the white lining budget that we use on a yearly basis. That's just to give you an idea. We're doing great work. We're bringing loads of money in, and we're helping our residents, but we do need to consider our revenue spend in future years.
Yeah. And just before I bring in I'm gonna got Carleen, Nate, and
Be Shantu first.
hold on, let me write this down. And two. Right, hold on, chair's privilege. It struck me, there's some really good work here in the notes, but we don't advertise it to residents. So there's a lot of money being spent here on residents' behalf, but we don't tell the resident, right? When I say comms, what I don't mean is just long, 8-page long newsletters which no one reads. Perhaps street boards, notice boards, schools. Can we say try something different? Because a lot of work's been done, a lot of improvements. I don't think the council are getting credit. No point doing something if no one knows, and people walk past things and you go, why am I road being dug up? And you email your council. I get it back. When I tell them what's coming, they go, oh, I didn't know that. Please, when I say comms, I don't mean a really dry email from the council communication process, right? And the second one, Paul, when I let you come back, Paul, you mentioned budget, something I got. In the note, it gives it gives a feel, but we're going to pause projects or budget, but we don't say we're going to cancel, right? And I think I'll be much more secure and happy, brave enough to say, because of our budget, cancel this project. And I think the project in here should be categorized on priority. If we don't get any money, these projects go. Because at the moment, it's all a bit, we're going to do it, but we're going to top slice and we're going to slow down. It doesn't feel right. And I think be a bit more realistic if it's that situation. So really what I'm asking for is more communication to tell people what's going on, a little bit more realism, budgeted impacts on what projects will go if we don't get any. My overall comments on that. I'm going to bring in the councillors, and I've got Shantu,
Yes.
I've got Carleen, I've got Nate, and I've got Simon. Do you want to do it in
Please, yeah, that'd be great.
Right, happy, manage your own rules in threes. All right, come on.
Page number 44. We live in a diverse borough. Not everyone cycles due to hidden barriers. So why is the bus priority budget is only 0.26 million? Why the budget is low for bus priority?
Bus priority? Well, that's not us.
But still, we are responsible as a.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we get it from local implementation plans, LIP funding for bus priority routes, but we don't decide how much we get. That comes from TfL.
Mr. Chair, I just would like to, but as a cabinet member, you could suggest them because we need more.
I mean, we always are ambitious, but ultimately they decide what schemes they want to fund and prioritise.
and don't forget, John may be on the cabinet, but he's one of 33. So it's a decision that Newham makes. We campaign endlessly for things.
Yeah.
But can't always.
If TfL gives us the money, I guarantee you every single scheme. I love buses. I really do.
Okay, I'm going to bring in.
I know you might not be satisfied with the answer, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's not our choice, but no.
So right, I'm going to bring in. I just want to in support. You may have noticed Scunthorpe has got a few problems at the moment, right? Overnight, even a week, that's a few £1 billion the government's got to find, right? It does have an impact, Shantu. Those things over here on the TV does impact.
Yeah.
Goes to his meeting, he doesn't get his money. We have to look at things in the round now. Where we turn on our TV, when they've got a problem on the government, it's our problem, right? So, right.
And it's also, Chair, if I might, it isn't for the want of us trying, because actually we raise this all the time.
Yeah.
And if we got more money, then we would do it.
Yeah.
But TfL, their budget,
Martina and Paul.
The table referred to small projects, so they also funded bus priority on major projects. next year is going to be money for major projects such as Romford Road, High Street, Stratford, Parking Road. So there's much more than that 0.26.
That's that's not a major project.
That was last year's, that's what we received last year. So as Martina said, the budget we're expecting for this year from Transport for London is much more than that.
Could you update this?
Okay, Shantu, we were going to do it in threes. Now, because you've gone back, we've done it in ones, right? So,
I'm just
right.
asking for the update. That's
all right, Carly.
Thank you, Chair. It is Paul, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
You don't know who Paul is? My God,
My God, where have you been?
I didn't know what.
Anyway, Paul, you took words out of my mouth earlier when you talked about the brilliant work that's happening. If we look in our slides, actually all the projects that are detailed, 1 to 11, and then 12 to 16 are all actually well-deserved areas that need investment because they have been underinvested for a long time. However, what I was concerned about is, and my question I wrote down is how we're going to deliver, that's great. But how are we going to maintain and how we're going to afford to maintain these wonderful projects and the things that have happened prior? And why, and I guess my question to you would be, in the process of bidding, putting the bids in for these pieces of work, why are we not thinking about the ongoing costs and securing the budget at that moment for the ongoing costs? So I was thinking about trees. Jamie knows I've got an issue with trees, especially on the Barking Road on my side of my ward. There are beautiful trees along the Barking Road that have never been looked after and are destroying the pavements in which people are supposed to walk. Some parts of those roads can't even push a buggy down or push a wheelchair down. So I wonder, I'm listening to you say about the tree coverage and what that would look like and what benefits that has to the tarmac. But what I want to understand is who's looking after that? In 100 years from now, the people are sitting here and they say, well, that scrutiny panel actually asked the right questions.
Cool.
So the first part was with regards to growth bids. Yes, we are putting growth bids internally to try and release more revenue funding from the council fund to help maintain that. With regards to the trees, we've just passed through cabinet last week our capital programme for this year that we're in now. And 273,000 as part of that will help tackle some of those issues with trees. And we are fully aware that we haven't been maintaining the tree stock for a number of years. So the idea would be we're going in, if the trees need to come out or we need to do work around the trees, that fund will help tackle that. And we'd look to manage that and put that in place every year going forward. One of the things we're doing in our new schemes though is those trees were planted where you dig a hole in the ground, you put a tree in the ground, you leave it. You walk away and it looks lovely. And what we're doing now, effectively, when you plant a tree in the ground, there's a whole system that goes in the ground. It's not just a tree that goes in. The infrastructure in the ground is there to try and protect the asset for future years.
Okay.
So we don't have the damage that we see on our road.
Brilliant.
Just to add to that, we also pay for a couple of years of maintenance of that planting or tree that we planted.
Yeah, I was going to jump in again. No, that's fine. So we've got capital and revenue. So when we obtain the capital funding, it will only last for the life of the project. We can't extend the life of the project into revenue. So the likes of TfL won't give us revenue to maintain that.
Chair, I have a supplementary.
A cabinet member wants to.
No, I was just going to say one of the things that we need to try and figure out is how we can use more of the parking income on our projects. It's probably very controversial, but actually, when we're raising money through parking, that.
Can't you just use it?
No, apparently not.
I think you can.
We can if it hasn't been stolen to do something.
I think if it's in the house, you can.
No, over 12 million of our parking goes on Freedom Pass.
Yeah.
And I know everybody else probably knew that, but I didn't know that. I thought that TfL paid for Freedom Passes. So our Freedom Passes for all these older people who've got these little twirlies and stuff like that, It's nearly 13 million it costs us as a local authority.
John, do you want to?
Just one more thing, I didn't know about feeding passes until I was on tech and London councils had to reapprove it through TfL. But one of the scariest things I've seen was a growth chart. I can't remember the figures off the top of my head, but we're talking about increasing millions year by year by year in terms of growth of freedom passes, and the PRA pays for that. But as with temporary accommodation, you can see that the growth outpaces the very need that we get.
I'm going to bring in Colleen for her supplement.
So my supplementary is going to be this, and I'm going to tailor it slightly different now on the back of what you just said. We all know what we know, yeah? We all know that as a society, we're living longer.
Yeah.
So that means that more people are going to need a freedom pass, right? I don't know whether or not at that point I'd be able to get a freedom pass because maybe the money would have run out by then. But anyway, so why are we not thinking about this? Why are we, when I'm listening to what's been said today in this meeting, there's a strategy for this, there's a policy for that. Are we overlaying all of these policies? I see one of the projects on here is Project 10, ELV charge points ongoing, which is, I think, something you referred to earlier. But then I think about the parking paper and talking about this view about charging more for EV cars. Are we overlaying?
That's something that we haven't done, is that.
Haven't, but it's a conversation. My question is are we overlaying these policies, these strategies that we have, the future needs of the borough, what's come before and lessons learned, in order to ensure that when we're going forward, one, we've got the right amount of money in our coffers, and two, that actually we're forward thinking, because in a little time from now, things can look very different, right? And that's the seriousness of it is. I just wonder, how are we future-proofing a lot of this work? Because this actually, this infrastructure projects for this borough is something that we need, that could be easily scrapped.
Yeah. And I totally agree with Carly's question. It links back to something I said to Paul. In terms of the budget implication, it does feel like we should be doing less to get the things right so they get all joined up. Because I do think you haven't scenario checked the future budget.
I think it goes back to the point I made, that if we were able to spend more of is it PRS, John? Yeah, then actually we probably wouldn't have a problem. But I do think that Carlene's right.
Yes.
It's very easy. One of the things I always think of, and we thought about that when we were doing children's, we have to put in place something that can't be unravelled.
Yeah.
Because how easy it would be to change, all right? And that's, so the money that we're using at the moment is something from the Keep Newer Moving Fund.
From Robin Wells.
Wells. But that we've come to the end of that now. I think, have we not, Paul?
We have, this is the last year.
Last year of it.
Question, why can't we use the parking money?
I don't know.
It's physically stopping you from dipping your hands into that pot and using them. Well, what is stopping you?
There's a lot of
Conrad Hall.
Right, so it's an internal issue.
Yeah.
But we can spend the money.
Yeah, we could.
Right.
That was ring fence.
No, it's not ring fence. So we can spend the money, it's our money with our section 151, and we can pitch a pot and take the money and put it over here. I know I simplified it all.
Yeah.
Martina, you say no.
Only if it were that simple.
Sorry.
John.
So,
good question, Carl.
In terms of future proofing, so a lot of these measures are seen within the prison of climate. A point that I often make, and Councillor Wilson's also on top of this, is that there's also a public health factor here as well. So a good example is those trees. They also cool down the environment and give you a level of protection from the sun. And one of the things that we're seeing from climate change, it's extreme heat, which impacts the elderly. But another factor is that how healthy you are in your 20s and 30s would in a huge way impact how healthy you are in your seventies and eighties.
Yep.
So by encouraging more active travel and more walkability, that health impact that it has at a young age will impact you at a later age as well.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Chair, can I just ask one, just for your actual benefit? So just, Paul, you talked about a paper that came to cabinet just recently.
Yeah.
I guess something that kind of just dinged in my own head was, why are we not seeing that paper first in this space so that we can actually start having those robust conversations around.
In pre-scrutiny.
Yeah, I just think that there's
Send us the paper.
really important work that's going on here, but I feel like we're missing.
Okay. So the action there, Sarah, as a cabinet member, could scrutiny have sight of the paper? We can give you back informal comments and
In going forward,
yeah, going forward, yeah.
going forward, yeah.
And also, because with the parking charges, I think the point of making the parking charges bit of the meeting, we could have been part of that consultation.
Could have, yeah.
I think, you know, we're here constructive. Nate?
Saved us an hour.
Yeah.
Chair, firstly, I just want to say thank you to the team for the Westfield Avenue project. It's like genuinely.
Speak up, Nate, can't hear you.
The Westfield Avenue project is like genuinely transformative. It's never been built like that in the first place. There are some other roads in East also should never have been built like that. It's a scandal that in this, like not that long ago, we built these roads and we're now having to pay to fix them. So I wanted to ask about the East Village Connections project. This is a project that I was talking to the then commissioner at the LLDC for in 2022. We're not talking about commencing it till 2027. With the transition of planning powers from LLDC, we now, I believe we received some of that, some of the developer contributions still in section 106 that LLDC was holding. Has it been looked at whether that money can be used to bring forward East Village Connections sooner? Because that's like Pennybrook Street, where there was a cyclist killed by a bus not that long ago because of a lack of cycle lanes on that road. So seeing 2027 for a project that I was talking to the commissioner about in 2022 is really frustrating. So I'm just wondering whether that can be brought forward.
Maybe it's something we need to talk to our planning colleagues about. Because my understanding, and it could be quite different from yours, depending on the source of information, is that the LLDC has spent or is planning on spending most of the SIL before it ever gets to Newham. That's my understanding, and if you heard any different, I'll be quite interested, because actually LLDC SIL has been something I've been really looking at enviously, as is the rail planning department. But my understanding is that they were planning on spending it before I get a chance to touch it.
But are we just sort of looking at that and going 2027, that's when we'll do it, or are we constantly looking at other avenues to bring that forward? Along 5 years, it's been when the project is conceived of and when we actually so long.
John, do you want to just
Go ahead.
So one of the things you notice, Westfield Avenue is a good example of this, is that that's been funded by the LLDC. What I would also say, and this is my own personal point, is one of the criticisms that I've heard is that certain areas of the borough are receiving more investment in these than other parts of the borough. So a good example is the Rumford Road scheme. So the Arc of Corridor, you've got the Viaducts Corridor, the Rumford Road, and the works that we're doing in Stratford Olympic Park. If there is funding available, what I would like to see is other parts of the borough that have not seen that investment, see that investment in the future. So for example, Green Street, East End, there's very limited works. I think there is a social justice argument here that if we are going to invest with our own money or with externally funded sources that are not paid for by the LLDC, that the social, just for fairness, that we should focus on those areas.
That do also have to take into account where is dangerous and where are people being killed.
Yeah.
So
it's Green Street,
and on Stratford High Street at junction with Carpenter's, but like we have to be responsive to where.
John has given a commitment to look at that, and if you've got any information, you can. Just on the Green Street is the 4th biggest jewellery quarter in the country.
Yep.
I think it deserves a little bit of love, attention and care.
I think it deserves to be pedestrianised.
I want to say to the public viewing, I didn't say that. It was a cabinet member. So the Traders Association.
That part, we have discussed that before.
Yeah, I joke.
No, I don't mean the whole of Green Street.
Yeah.
But we have talked about actually looking at Green Street as a whatever district and actually pedestrianising part of it. So like we've got East Ham High Street that no one goes to anywhere because there's nothing to buy there. That is pedestrianised.
I think we've got.
Happened
So
to Green Street.
Green Street, right, hold on, Green Street is the fourth biggest jewellery quarter in the country.
Yeah, it's like the lesser of.
I mean, it needs, but there's no plan, there's no major.
There is.
In the.
In here, no, because it's not about us.
£300,000 worth of jewellery.
This is about this, that would come on, that would be a plan of how we're going to look at Green Street. And then we'll talk to us about it.
But could.
It's possible.
Could, as an action be, but.
I think you'll find that talks are happening in the regeneration and inclusive economy part of the county.
But it doesn't exist as a road project, so that's not.
No, because there's no.
Doesn't count, right?
There's no point in us having a road project if they haven't made up their minds what they want to do.
Great, okay.
You can have as many road projects as you like.
Sorry, Chair, can I answer Councillor Hickman? East Village Connect. You're right. We are working with developers. One of the reasons why some of the scheme has stopped is because we've had developers come in and they're actually going to build some of that scheme. So on Pennybrook Street, the developers are actually going to come in on 278 and do the sides on the north and south. So that will actually happen, but that'll happen.
Do you know, does that include the zebra crossing there?
It does, yeah.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh, and do you know when?
It'll be when it'll be as part of their 278 agreement. So I would have expected it's close to before they complete the works on the building site itself.
Okay.
But some of the other areas around the East Village connections, same again, there were discussions with LDC with regards to planning, but one that the developers have actually pulled out. So where we were hoping they would have been on site now, that's actually pulled out. So that's why some of that's being brought back as well. I can come back and let you know what site it is. I think it might be N1 or something. But
Okay, I've got Simon, I've got Sabia.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your thingy, whatever it's called.
Thank you.
He doesn't see your hand, Shanford.
Well, the question is, it's a nice simple one. A lot of the projects we all know, be it bus or cycle, is money from TfL. My understanding is TfL have got budgetary restraints coming.
Yep.
How is this going to impact? And have we, for example,
okay, we'll take a
next year's figure, is that being guaranteed?
Okay, question.
Thank you.
One question?
Yeah.
Second question, Sabia. Third question, Shantu.
Relevant, this is here, but I know you're working on Rick Roberts Way and Stratford. Do you know the Stratford, a traffic light on Walton Road, which is parallel to Rick Roberts Way? After the work has been done, I think there has been more accidents. Is that something that we could look into or not?
So is that, sorry, Chair?
So you've got
at the junction itself, the crossroads of Rick Roberts Way, Stratford High Street,
Yeah.
and Walton Road.
So after the traffic lights were put there has been more accidents than before that. So is that something that we can look into?
If you take it as a percent, take that away.
I'll answer now. Yes, it's on a scheme for Stratford High Street. That is on the list here, which is number 12. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Shantu.
Hi, from page number 46, I'm referring that line, you say improvement to facilitate growth and changing requirement in the line with legislation, including new design and implementation. So my question referring these lines. Thames Water is taking a longer period to complete the leakage work to maintain on the main road and residential street, which has been causing traffic. Why is not LBN strictly asking them to finish the work on time?
Right, those are the three. So the first one, Simon, Sabia's, which has been answered.
Yeah.
Who's going to answer Simon's question?
I'll jump in first, Simon, that's right. Next, you put it with TfL. We're in discussions with TfL at the moment, trying to nail down exactly what they're giving us, to be completely honest. They haven't been very clear. But it isn't just TfL. The schemes aren't just funded by TfL. We do have a lot of developer funding. we're very successful with the likes of GLA and applying to GLA. Obviously, we have enough funding and other departments, central government departments that too. So I don't think we should hang all of our books on TfL in the future, and I think that's how we safeguard ourselves going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, councillor for this question.
Sorry.
Councillor for this.
Yeah, so can I answer that as well? That's
Yeah.
Thames Water, yes. So a network management team, they do push Thames Water. If Thames Water actually have a delay, so we agree a programme with Thames Water to complete a piece of work, if they overrun that programme, they have to actually pay delay damages to ourselves. So there is a means, a financial means for us to recoup money from them to try and get them to do the work as quickly as possible.
Are you asking them to refund this money or?
So no, what would happen is they would make an application or a license to our network management team to excavate the carriageway and put in, we say, a new pipe or Thames Water. If they said they were going to do that within 6 months and that overruns to, we say, 7 months, we will penalise them for 6th month for every day thereafter. And it's a fine applied to them throughout that.
Okay, I'm going to hold on.
Okay.
That's the incentive.
Don wants to add some context.
Just very quickly, alignment, so Thames Water has been a problem for all London local authorities, least of all Newham. There's discussions of adopting a TfL standard line rental scheme, which should help encourage Thames Water to do their jobs and do it quickly.
Brilliant.
That mean?
Yeah.
Rental?
Basically, it's a charge on the road works that they would do. I mean, Jamie, do you want?
I'll jump in actually. Yeah. So lane rental is something that TfL do. Other authorities, and there's 3 authorities in the UK who do it. Effectively, what it is you limit when someone can actually be on the road, and it will be everyone. So it won't just be Thames Water, it'll be ourselves as well.
Okay.
So we'd say you can be on the road from 9:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. Okay. They're your road work hours, you can do those. But we might be specific and say outside of school, you can't work between 8 and 9 or 8 and half 9. There are issues around it, because it won't just be Thames Water. It will be ourselves as well.
Okay.
So we need to be really mindful when we do it, and it's something obviously we're looking into for yourself.
Okay.
But it is something that we need to be really mindful of.
Okay, great. John,
There's risks.
you mentioned your tech meetings, which is the London Council Transport.
Yeah.
And you've given some very good information, some insight today. Could I ask that when the minutes come out, you just send them to the clerk and we send them to the committee and they can read it at their leisure? Because I think it'd be useful for us to be with you, at those meetings.
In spirit.
Yeah.
In spirit. Because you've given some really good insight today.
Sure.
And I think it'd be useful for us to have that. And if you just have the minutes, send it to Karen, we'll send it round and the guy can read it. And I think that would be a brilliant way to do that, right? So in terms of issues which you discussed tonight, one is communications, right? No dry emails. There's some really great stuff in here. I just walked past the board, I don't know what you call them. But it goes up and down. The electronic.
You mean the electronic thing?
Yeah. And look, there's some stuff on there which is not really good information, right? When I walked past it tonight. But what I've heard tonight is some fantastic information about the very road I'm walking along. You're telling me what's going on and the millions of pounds of spent.
I don't know, we don't put stuff on those, do we?
So
To.
the contract's just been in the process of signing, so all those old ones will come out and new digital ones.
We're literally talking about giving £100 or whatever to residents. But we've got millions being spent on residents. There's a disconnect, right? So one is some communications. Yeah, the thing I've picked up tonight is about budget realism. The really good between the both of you. And I think in here, we're talking about pausing and phasing. Really, I will say about cutting. Some of these should be in a priority order to say, if we don't get X amount of money, this project goes. But everybody's expectation is met. Because at the moment, when you cut, or if you cut some of these projects, one of your problems is managing expectations of residents and staff yourself. And I think more budget realism could come in here. We are about to go in recession as a country, and I don't think the realism is here. And I think it could be more. A really good bit here about trees and maintenance, and John came in after about the health benefits of trees and other public health benefits. I think we should talk about that a lot more. Now, a lot more. So, Councillor Sarah talked to, I can't believe someone's stopping you from spending money, Sarah. I'm
It's not stopping us from spending money, it's allowing us to spend the money.
Well, I think you can, because any parking income needs to be spent within the transport budget, right? And this is the transport budget, so why don't you?
Don't answer.
Right, you don't have to answer that one.
125, do you want to extend?
No, we're gonna.
No, thank you.
Finish, right? And the other bit I've got is Green Street. I know you said you're waiting for regen colleagues to, you know, come to a conclusion, but I think it might be useful if you put a placeholder in your work to say about Green Street.
Except that until they actually say anything, it's not a place. I mean, you all laugh when I say pedestrianise it.
Okay.
Don't laugh.
Can I say, thank you, can I say thank you for me, and also to thank Jamie Cook. It's your last meeting.
First,
No, it's his last meeting.
last meeting.
Last scrutiny.
Last scrutiny meeting. Just want to say, you've been a great officer of the council. You've been great and helped me many times. And also some of the members here. So I wish you well for Cambridge. Right. And also to thank everyone. I've really gained a lot tonight. And if there's any more information you want to send to us, please do. We do read it. It's really, I do anyway, and it's really good.
Do read it.
Keep good work. Fantastic.
That's me.
Wicked.
Excuse me, we've got work plan.
And we're going to close the meeting now.
No, work program.
21:22. I close the meeting. 26. Thank you.
Have we got to do the work program?
No.
Isn't it?
We missed the end of the.
It's the